Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this episode of my new YouTube series, I will be talking about how I take portraits under the stars. And today we are at one of my favorite locations for portraits under the stars, and this is in Okinawa, Manzamo. It's in Japan. It's one of the most beautiful locations for shooting night portraits here. So let me explain briefly what kind of gear I'm using about taking. So first I will start with one of the most important things when shooting in the night, it's the tripod. Especially when shooting portraits under the stars, I am using very long exposures, like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, so it's impossible to hold that with your hand, so I need to use a tripod. Usually my settings for shooting portraits under the stars are very similar. 30 seconds ISO about 1600. I'm shooting at aperture about 4 or 4.5. I will explain about that later. The camera that I'm using usually for shooting portraits under the stars, it's 1DX. I'm using Canon. It's very powerful when shooting at high ISO. I don't have problems using even 2000 or 3200 ISO. So that's the reason I like 1DX. The lens I'm using for shooting portraits under the stars, I want to shoot with wide angle lens. And the reason for that is I want to get all the stars very wide. I would not shoot stars with my favorite 135 lens because we will not see any stars. The lens that is my favorite for shooting portraits under the stars is this one. It's the Sigma 12 to 24 millimeter. It's a relatively dark lens. It's like 4.5 at 12 millimeters. So I have to shoot at ISO around 1600 at least. But it's a really amazing lens at 12 millimeters. I will show you some examples shot with that lens in this video. You'll see them later in the video. The other lens that sometimes I've been using, but maybe recently not that much, is the Canon 24 1.4, which is not that wide. It's a standard wide-angle lens, but at 1.4 it's quite amazing because it's very bright. But you have to keep one thing in mind. When shooting portraits under the stars, you want to keep your subject sharp, but you also want to keep the stars sharp. I wouldn't recommend you shooting portraits under the stars at 1.4. The next thing that is quite important for shooting under the stars is the lighting. There is no way you can do sharp portraits under the stars using constant light, like I'm doing in this video, because your shutter speed is very long and your subject is going to be moving maybe. Nobody can stand still for 30 seconds. So that's why you need a strobe. It's going to freeze your subject, hopefully, in the end of the frame. I am using Nissin MG8000, which is my favorite strobe, but for shooting portraits under the stars, actually it doesn't matter, whatever strobe, it's going to do the job. You just need a strobe that you can fire manually if you don't have rear curtain sync settings on your camera like we Canon users. And basically the settings that I'm using, quite low power. Usually I am at ISO like 1600 or 2000 or even more, so you don't need that much output from your flash. So basically I'm shooting like settings at 128, 164, so maybe the most powerful settings I would use is like 1/32. You don't need that powerful strobe, you don't need fast recharge times, you don't need any fancy settings, so whatever is gonna do the job. The next important thing is your radio trigger. I'm using Cactus. I'm using Cactus V6 radio triggers. Well, especially when you're a Canon user, so if you don't have rear curtain sync, in Cactus radio trigger you can have rear curtain sync. And it's not actually rear curtain sync, it's a setting that delays your flash, and you can choose how many seconds after you click the shutter the flash is gonna fire. So if you're shooting like 10 seconds exposure, you can just set it up like fire these strobes at 10 seconds after I click the shutter button, and it's gonna do that. It's very simple, but actually with the old V6 trigger, the normal V6 trigger, you only can do this up to 10 seconds. If you want to go to 30 seconds, what can you do? Well, basically nothing. And what I am actually doing is, well, I usually hold my strobe. I hold my light stand, I just keep it somewhere. I click my camera shutter button, and I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 25, 26, 27, 28, and I go, and in the end of the exposure I'm trying to be very close to the 30th second if I'm shooting in 30 seconds, and I just go to the end and I just click and I freeze my subject. That's what I'm doing with the flash. Am I shooting with straight flash? No, I'm not. I want to have a light modifier. I want to have something to soften the light, especially when I'm shooting girls. I don't want to have hard shadows on their face. I want to keep the light as soft as I can. So I might use umbrella, I might use a beauty dish or something else, but the thing that I'm using most when I'm shooting portraits under the stars is softbox. Oh, it's compact, I can just put it in my bag, and when it's like this and it becomes like this. It's the Cactus 60 by 60 softbox, and what I also like quite a lot about it is that it has the grit, which is really keeping the direction of your light very nice. So you don't have your light spilling everywhere, maybe in the ground or somewhere you don't need it. You just have it focused on your subject, which is pretty good. Well, basically these are my main pieces of gear that I'm using when shooting under the stars. Here is one more thing that is really crucial, really very important for shooting portraits under the stars. The color of the night and the color of the day, they're very different. Night is much warmer than the day. When I'm shooting portraits under the stars, I want to keep that setting, I want to keep the balance between them. I don't want to have the stars to be very warm, so I want to keep them at like white balance around 3000, because, well, like that's how I see the stars. They're a little bit more bluish. The sky when you're shooting the stars, I like it a bit bluish. But if I keep the settings of my camera, if I make it 3000 or 2800 or something, and if I leave everything like that, what's gonna happen is that my subject is gonna become very blue also, and I don't want that. So here comes a very important piece of gear that you need for shooting portraits under the stars. And it's so much important for me that I always keep it in my wallet. It's the orange filter. This is the tool you need to balance your white balance. And so I put this on the strobe. I put it on the front of my strobe. So this means that when I get my white balance down to 3000 Kelvin and I have this on the strobe, I will still have my subject face, skin color normal, while having the stars are like really beautiful blue color. So it's one of my very important tools for shooting portraits, not under the stars only. I use it all the time when I'm shooting portraits at night in the city or somewhere dark place. And one of the last things you need for shooting portraits under the stars is a lot of patience, because every single shot is gonna be like very long exposure. It's gonna be like maybe 10 seconds, maybe 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds, and you need to wait for each of these shots. So you cannot shoot like 100 shots probably at one photo shoot under the stars. Usually when I do that, I always end up with like 5 or 6 shots maximum that I can use for my portfolio, for my Facebook or whatever. And it's really fun actually, because, well, I've had a lot of examples when I go out shooting portraits under the stars and I see the sunrise. Well, in the end, one more time, just the most important things. Tripod, you need a long exposure, you need high ISO, you're gonna need a camera that is very strong at high ISO. Like I said, I'm using 1DX for this. You need a wide angle lens, you need a strobe, you need some light modifier like softbox or umbrella, you need orange filter to balance the stars with your subject. So thank you for watching this video, and it's one of my first, tutorials about how I do the stuff, how I take my pictures. If you like what you see, if you like the video, don't hesitate to leave comments below. I would be happy just to hear your opinion, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'm having a lot of videos already on my channel, so take a look at them and maybe you will find something that's gonna be interesting for you. stay with me and thanks for watching. Yeah.